From record-setting low temps to year-round miserable. Stay tuned to number 1 to find out the coldest places on Earth. Number 10. Rogers Pass, Montana, United States. Bet you weren't expecting us to start in a place like this, right? After all, Montana is a state that is known for its beauty and virtually untouched nature. Seriously, it's one of the least populated states in the US. But as in all things, location is key to the answer to this question. Rogers Pass isn't a city, but instead it's a stretch of land next to Helena National Forest. And it's the stretch of land where Montana Highway 200 is located, which makes it very populated and popular. In fact, it's the best route to get between two of Montana's big cities, Great Falls and Missoula. Its record low, though, was measured back in 1954, where a temperature of negative 70 degrees Fahrenheit was made. To be clear, that makes it the coldest place in the continental United States, which of course means excluding Hawaii and Alaska. Minus 70 degrees is what you might call instant cold, as in, the moment you step outside, your body immediately starts to freeze, and you'd be wise not to be out in it. On the other hand, given that it's been 65 years since that legendary cold snap, you might be okay going there. Might. Number 9. Stanley, Idaho, United States. I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, I thought that Montana place was the coldest place in the United States outside of Alaska. And it is, if you count it solely on the record low that it had in 1954. However, as anyone who has ever been cold will tell you, there's a difference between being cold for a short time and being cold for a long time. And that's why Stanley, Idaho is a city that you definitely want to avoid if you want to stay warm all the time. It's one of the places on Earth that is known for its extreme seasons. By that, I mean that in the summer, it consistently gets hot, like 80 plus degrees hot. But then, in the winters, its average is minus 1 degree Fahrenheit. Yeah, it's below zero there on average. That's cold. Plus, its lowest temperature ever is minus 54 degrees Fahrenheit. And so, if that's the only maximum so far, and the average is minus 1, that leaves a lot of leeway on both sides. What might be the biggest irony here is that Stanley is a vibrant town, but it only has 63 people that live there. Number 8. Prospect Creek, Alaska. Before we talk about this beauty, take a moment to like this video and join the Zero to Hero community by subscribing below. Don't forget to click that little notification bell too, so that you can always stay up to date with our newest videos. Prospect Creek. Nope, this isn't a place where gold miners were, or at least not anymore. This is actually a place in Alaska that is now very much uninhabited, but don't let that fool you, it once played a key role in the history of the state. You see, at one time, this location was a key spot in the building of the Trans-Alaskan Pipeline, and it required thousands of people to help make it. And so all of those workers found themselves in Prospect Creek, and it wasn't exactly the nicest place in the world, temperature-wise. In January, the average temperature is a blistering minus 14.9 degrees Fahrenheit. And in 1971, 3 years before the work on the pipeline began, the lowest recorded temperature in all of the United States, all 50 of them, was made when it dropped to minus 80 degrees. Another thing that lends to the cold temperatures is the fact that it snows for months at a time, specifically between the months of October through April. That's a lot of snow, including times when it can snow 24 inches in the period of a month. You all knew Alaska was cold, but did you know it was that cold? Number 7. Snag, Yukon, Canada. Well, what do you know? The country that stands smack dab between the continental United States and Alaska is also home to one of the coldest places in the world. What are the odds? Not so ironically, the Yukon of Canada is famous and infamous for various things, including the Canadian Gold Rush, which is still going on right now. And yes, being one of the coldest places in all of the world. Specifically, in Snag, located in the Yukon, the temperature there once reached negative 81 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes it the coldest recorded temperature in all of North America. Here's a little fun story about that record though. On February 2nd, 1947, the temperature reached minus 80 degrees, and then the very next day, it reached minus 81 degrees. Both days setting records for how cold it was. Could you imagine that? Being in that amount of cold for back-to-back days? especially when you consider that Snag isn't a big city, it's just a small little village, and it was likely far too cold to try and go somewhere else to get warm, or even attempt to get warm, that is. So it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that Snag is now deserted. Would you want to risk that cold snap happening again? I don't think so. Number 6. North Ice Greenland. Here's a little history lesson for you. When the Vikings were at the peak of their power and they wanted to expand even more, they came to the New World by crossing the Atlantic, and when they did, they found Greenland. Or what would be called Greenland, that is. Anyway, to fool their enemies, they called it Greenland and raved about its lush, beautiful landscapes, a distinct contrast to how it actually was. An ice-filled, glacier-packed place that is almost as big as a continent. So it's no surprise that it, too, has a really cold spot on it. This was found by the British, actually, who made their own research post on Greenland called North Ice. I'm just gonna let that go and move on. Anyways, this outpost was truly built on the ice of Greenland, and it was there in the 1950s that they got to experience the wonder of minus 87-degree weather. Yeah, that's cold, and that's what they had to deal with. Number 5. Yukon, Russia. Yep, another country that, not so surprisingly, makes it on this list. Russia. This place is infamous for being cold, and I'm not just talking about the people. I kid, mostly. Anyway, in the Sakha Republic, right next to the Indigirka River, you'll find a place called Oymyakon. This town only has 500 people in it and is considered one of the coldest inhabited places on the planet, which is quite a feat. Its defining feature is that of its subarctic climate, meaning that it continually drops to temperatures that you'd expect in the coldest places on Earth. For example, in 1924 the temperature dropped to minus 71.2 degrees, and then 9 years later dropped to minus 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, almost breaking the centennial mark. It was so cold at the time that it was believed that the only place colder was Antarctica, and they're not wrong in some ways. Number 4. Ice Greenland. Thought we were done with Greenland? Nope, that place is far too cold to only have one on the list, and that's why Izmit has come to the list. And this time, it's the average cold we need to look at, because the highest average of the area is only 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's in July. In contrast, February has an average cold of minus 53 degrees Fahrenheit. The only reason we even know about this place and its temperature is because of an expedition there in the 1930s, and that one was fraught with problems. Mainly, 2 of the leaders passed away and another had serious injuries due to frostbite. Still, the temperatures were recorded and Greenland remains very cold to this day. Number 3. Verkhoyansk, Russia. And back to the motherland we go, because Russia has another legendary cold spot to offer, and this time in the form of Verkhoyansk. And as you'll find out, this place is not only colder, it's also a place that is more populated. At last census, Verkhoyansk had around 1,300 people in it, but what makes it legendary and infamous and a record holder is in regards to its temperature swings. It has the greatest range in regards of the temperatures in all of the world today. 189 degrees Fahrenheit separate its highest and lowest temperatures. But what is its lowest? Negative 93.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes it the coldest place in the entire Northern Hemisphere. Number 2. Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. Mongolia holds a very special place in history. It was the birthplace of several legendary war leaders, including the Khans, Genghis and Kublai. But it's also home to a place where the average temperature of the entire year is below zero. Yeah, forget about being cold just in the wintertime or the season. If you go to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, you'll find yourself looking at temperatures of minus 2.4 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. Obviously, there are highs that get above that, but it's known as the coldest capital in the world today. But that's not even the craziest part. Ulaanbaatar is the capital of Mongolia, and there's actually 1.2 million people living there right now, which means there are 1.2 million people going to work, school, playing, and more in negative degree weather. And yet, Ulaanbaatar is known as one of the most cultural cities in Mongolia. Just goes to show that some people can brave the cold. Number 1. Vostok Antarctica. Come on, you knew that there was only one true place to go in order to get the coldest temperatures on Earth, right? I mean, there's only one continent on Earth that's completely covered in snow and ice. and that's Antarctica. But like all regions and places, the temperatures fluctuate during the year, so it's honestly hard to tell just how cold it gets there. But in 1957, Russian scientists went and made an outpost in Antarctica in the Princess Elizabeth Land, part of the continent. This outpost was to help keep the scientists safe as they drilled for ice cores, which are used to further research into the history of our world. So, how cold is cold down in Antarctica? Well, according to very reliable results, this outpost called Vostok was able to witness negative 128.6 degree Fahrenheit weather. That's right, well below minus 100 degrees. That's freezing in every sense of the word. That's enough to basically give you instant frostbite, so it's no surprise that the scientists have to have super protective gear when doing ice core drillings and such. But there's another thing to ponder. This is the coldest temperature that we humans have measured, which technically means that it could possibly be colder in various parts of the world today. Food for thought next time you complain about being cold. What is the coldest temperature you've ever experienced? Let us know in the comments below and take care.